Hello there, and welcome to my series The Unfinished Arcs of Star Wars The Clone Wars. In this video we will be covering the 6th unfinished story arc, Return to the Jedi, more commonly known as the Sith Shrine arc. Please note there will be spoilers for Rebels, Resistance, and Ahsoka. Back in 2014, this story arc was the 8th to be left unfinished, but with the completion of Ahsoka's walkabout and the Bad Batch in 2020, it is now the 6th. Being production code 701704, this story arc would have been the original Season 7 finale, back when that season was planned to contain 20 episodes. This would have made story arc episodes 17 to 20 of that season. This story arc is the first one which never had its writer publicly revealed. Had this story arc been completed as planned, it would have most likely aired in early 2015. This story arc would have taken the narrative back to Ahsoka Tano, after we were last meant to see her in the original planned Season 6 finale, Ahsoka's Walkabout. Here we would see Ahsoka continue to perform undercity vigilante duties, with her discovering a terrible danger on the lowest levels of Coruscant. This would force Ahsoka to return to the Jedi Temple to warn the Jedi of the danger. The danger would affect Master Yoda deeply, having him go missing. Ahsoka would have a hard time convincing the Jedi Council to trust her, as she was no longer a member of the Order. Ahsoka with Anakin and Obi-Wan would use giant pod-like vehicles to traverse to the lowest levels of Coruscant. Here we would see that the lowest levels are all but abandoned, being ancient relics of a time forgotten, with only light rays piercing through the ceiling to provide a light source. While there was no population down here, there was to be revealed that giant kaiju-like monsters would be inhabiting these lower levels, with Dave Filoni's sketch showing us their huge size and that they could roll up into a ball. However, it is ultimately unknown what sort of role these creatures would have had in the story arc. It would be discovered that directly under the Jedi Temple would have been an ancient Sith temple housing a Sith shrine, in relation to a real-life phenomenon where newer churches were built on top of the ruins of older ones. This Sith shrine would have most likely been a somewhat explanation as to why the Jedi seemed to be so clouded in the Force, not being able to suspect Palpatine until it's far too late. At some point, Palpatine would attack the Jedi Temple Holocron Vault, causing Ahsoka to defend it by jamming one of her lightsabers into the vault's door. While fusing the door shut, this would turn Ahsoka's lightsaber into a lightning conductor which would shock her. This would have been the closest Ahsoka got to Palpatine, never directly meeting Darth Sidious, as that would have spelled her fate. Ahsoka would have had another new outfit for this story, with then toying with the idea of having her clothing be similar in style to Ventress, though whether this idea would have stayed throughout the development process of this story is unknown. Sadly, at the time of the cancellation, this was the first out of the latter 5 story arcs to only get draft scripts written for it, which was the case for all 24 episodes from the 7th and final production season. This was also the case for the Siege of Mandalore, back when the show was cancelled in 2013. However, as already seen, we do have sketches created by Dave Filoni during story pitching sessions that give us some visual cue to how this arc could have looked, though aspects would have most likely changed had this arc got further down the development track. Certain ideas of this story arc would later be reused in newer stories. We see another Sith temple in the Star Wars Rebels Twilight of the Apprentice episode, with Ahsoka automatically knowing it was a Sith temple, establishing that she's seen one before, which implies that Ahsoka's involvement in this story arc is indeed somewhat canon. Ahsoka would later face off against Sidious in the World Between Worlds in Rebels' final season. Star Wars Resistance would also show another Sith temple with its trivia guide for the episode Relic Raiders, confirming the existence of the Sith Shrine underneath Coruscant's Jedi Temple. The Sith Shrine is also featured in the High Republic era, with the Shrine's Wikipedia page referring to it as the Shrine in the Depths. The original Ahsoka D outfit meant for the original version of the Ahsoka's Walkabout arc could be used for this story arc if it ever gets finished. This could allow for that outfit design to finally be used on screen, while also being efficient as they would not need to figure out the design of a new Ahsoka costume, instead just updating the original Ahsoka D outfit to their current animation standards. Explained later on in this video, this would also keep the original Ahsoka D outfit design as the first outfit she uses after leaving the Order. The original Ahsoka D design would also fit more into Ahsoka's Clone Wars era outfit designs compared to the concept sketches they created showing her adopt a more Ventress-like design, something I think they wouldn't go ahead with anymore due to the design of her Siege of Mandalore outfit being more closer to her original Ahsoka D outfit design. Ahsoka's Rebels outfit also seems to be a further developed version of the Ventress-like outfit, which would add further reason for them to instead use that original Ahsoka D design over a finalised version of that original concept. Had this story arc been finished after Season 5 was shortened, then it and the previous arc, Son of Dathomir, would have repeated a pattern from Season 5 within the original 20 episode length Season 7, where the final 2 arcs of the season focused on Maul and then Ahsoka, something which seems to unintentionally allude to them eventually being in a story arc together in what would have been Season 8 with the Siege of Mandalore. The first theory I have as regards to who wrote this story arc. I feel like based on a continued pattern from the last 2 seasons that it most likely would have been Charles Murray, making the original planned finales of Season 5, 6 and 7 all being written by him, with all 3 of those stories all being focused on Ahsoka. If Charles Murray wasn't the writer for this arc, then I think the second most likely writer would have been Christian Taylor, due to his previous works on the Mortis and Yoda's Journey story arcs, which are quite focused on the Force. Another theory I have with this story arc has to do with the character of Barriss Offee. It has been stated that she was originally due to be killed off in Season 5, but then that was changed due to Dave Filoni having more plans for the character. It makes sense for those plans to have been for the Clone Wars, with this story arc feeling like the only place they make sense to be. It is possible these plans could have included Ahsoka confronting Barriss about her betrayal. Ahsoka would hear Barriss' side of the story, and this would ultimately add to her concerns about rejoining the Order, something we know she ultimately does not do at the conclusion of this story arc. Barriss could have also been used for other ulterior methods. As shown in the Season 6 Yoda's Journey arc, it was possible for Palpatine to affect Yoda through the use of Dooku's blood, with them having a Master-Padawan bond. Maybe Sidious through Sith alchemy could use Barriss against the Jedi to further his plans. Maybe this somehow affecting Yoda, or even being how Ahsoka is connected to the plot of this arc, due to her previous friendship with Barriss, possibly being the way Ahsoka discovers the danger to begin with. This story arc could have had a catacombs claustrophobic feeling to it, with lots of underground tunnels like the ones in real-life Paris. According to the concept sketches, this story arc seemed to also involve Poggle the Lesser. Maybe he would have had information on the danger that he'd be willing to share with the Jedi, but somehow escape and warn Dooku with the Jedi's discovery. This would continue a pattern of us seeing the imprisoned characters from previous story arcs suddenly not be imprisoned in later stories, as has been the case with Aurra Sing, Cad Bane, Boba Fett and Wat Tambor. Poggle could also be there to help the Sith power up the ancient Sith Shrine. As seen in Rebels, they seem to be the precursor to the Death Star technology that the Geonosians helped make, being weapons of mass power. It would not surprise me if the origin of Mace Windu referring to Ahsoka as a citizen came from the scripts of this story arc, considering one of its major points is the Jedi Council distrusting her. It was said that the Zillo Beast was to return in the full version of the 7th season. This story arc makes the most sense for it due to it being possible that Palpatine could have maybe used the clone Zillo to guard the Sith Shrine, though I ultimately think that idea was thrown out and replaced with the alternate kaiju-like monsters we see in Dave Filoni's sketch. It's possible the kaiju could be connected to the Force themselves, with them also somewhat resembling the Bendu character from Star Wars Rebels. It is most likely that this story would have been the original one where Ahsoka regained her lightsabers, as it's been confirmed the Siege of Mandalore scene where Anakin returns them to her was an addition when this story arc was not chosen to be completed for the final season. Ahsoka could be guarding the Holocron Vault after Palpatine could be wanting to steal one to power up his Sith Shrine, in a similar vein to how Star Wars Rebels has them power up the Sith Temple of Malachor with a Sith Holocron. Ahsoka would make sure that this plan would not happen, sealing the door to prevent access to the Holocrons at all costs. It's possible that Palpatine, having learned powers from 1,000 years ago, could manifest himself to appear in the temple and try to get access, with him physically being there being a bit too risky. In a similar vein to the Lost One episode in Season 6, I feel like this story arc was a further attempt to show that the Jedi were putting the pieces of the puzzle together, helping show that they weren't completely ignorant, but more like they were building a case against Palpatine, which only got ruined due to Mace Windu's hastiness when trying to arrest him. It's possible this story arc could be a successor to the Season 6 Yoda's Journey arc, maybe establishing that Palpatine feels it is time to get rid of Master Yoda, fearing he knows too much, with Palpatine being able to use the link that he created in that previous arc against Yoda to take him out of the picture for good. Palpatine would not foresee that Ahsoka would return and help the Jedi, assuming she no longer cares due to them turning their backs on her, but she would prove him wrong and ultimately be the key to stopping his goal and saving Yoda. This story arc would also follow up on Yoda's speech at the end of the Crystal Crisis arc, with the Sith having ancient weapons to enact the Jedi's destruction, showing the Sith Shrine being an example of one of those said weapons. The first retcon that most people assume means this story arc is no longer possible is due to Ahsoka's walkabout now leading directly to Ahsoka working with Ahsoka Tano. This does not remove this story arc from canon however, but instead now places it somewhere between the end of Season 5 and Ahsoka's walkabout. This story arc would most likely need a minimal amount of rework into its beginning and ending to account for this change. In the Siege of Mandalore, it's not explicitly stated that Anakin hasn't seen Ahsoka since she left, only using a vague statement that she quote-unquote left to be where she needed to be. Anakin's concern in the Siege of Mandalore when he hears Ahsoka was an Obadiah is based on the fact he hasn't seen her in a long time, which is still true even if the events of the Return of the Jedi arc are canon. This is due to how the events of the arc would still be set a long time before the Siege of Mandalore, as the Outer Rim sieges are now established to be starting during Ahsoka's walkabout and are said to go on for many months, including the majority of Padme's pregnancy. At the moment, it is most likely that this story arc takes place before both Walkabout and Siege of Mandalore, but after earlier unfinished arcs like Crystal Crisis, Dark Disciple and Son of Dathomir, placing it somewhere in the middle of the unfinished story arcs chronologically speaking. Ahsoka would only come back to the Order to help the Jedi because she still cares about them as people, but would still not rejoin the Order at the conclusion of this story arc, with her most likely coming to the conclusion that she wants to try and help people, becoming the Undercity vigilante that she originally did at the end of Walkabout, with that story now showing her at the end of her Undercity vigilante arc. As this story only ever reached draft scripting stage, it would not be that hard to alter the arc accordingly, being much easier to tweak than say Ahsoka's Walkabout that had its whole ending changed to tie into the Siege of Mandalore, while also switching out two entire characters. Anakin regarding the last time he saw Ahsoka could always be soft retconned in a similar way to the Ahsoka show, changing Ahsoka the White to Ahsoka the Grey, in the scene where she recruits Sabine that originated from Star Wars Rebels, with him now referring to this arc being when she left. The second and less major retcon is how the Tarkin novel seems to imply that Vader doesn't know about the Sith Shrine. I feel like this one is completely irrelevant to disregard the whole story arc on, as bigger changes have been done to novel and comic stories in the past when bringing stories to screen. Plus, for all we know, Vader could have kept it a secret from anyone that he knew about the Sith Shrine, as we know pretty much all of the Ahsoka novel has contradictions to on-screen events now, thanks to the Siege of Mandalore being completed and due to the events of Episode 6 of Tales of the Jedi, so this arc not being canon due to a tiny part of a novel is invalid. This story arc, just like all of the finished ones, would have no doubt had tweaks and changes to it had it been fully developed anyway. As mentioned before, Ahsoka now regains her lightsabers in the Siege of Mandalore arc instead of this one. She is still able to have her sabers in this arc however, as it's probably likely she ends up breaking them in a holocron vault door when trying to protect it. The lightsabers would most likely still be green by this stage. I think it would make sense for Anakin to have only recovered one saber for her by the time of this arc. Anakin, alongside fixing the broken one from this arc, would find the other one and make them both blue, giving more detail that he had to replace the crystal with the broken one and decided to make the other one blue to match. This story arc is one of the ones I would love to see on screen. While it's not as major in terms of character events such as Bounty Hunter, Dark Disciple, Son of Dathomir and Saving Voss, it would allow us a further insight into Ahsoka as a character, and also show us more insights into mysterious aspects of the Force. Focusing on Ahsoka, this arc would show us how she cares about people, that even those that have severely wronged her are still people she would want to help if they need it. In my opinion, Ahsoka is a vital part of this story arc, and personally I don't think they'd be able to remove her from it due to that, and as explained before, this arc can still work with Order's original intended characters anyway. I think any slight tweaks to this story arc to fit continuity are 100% worth it if it means we get to see this story completed on screen, and give Ashley Eckstein that one extra story for Ahsoka that she deserves. I also think with the advancements Lucasfilm Animation have gained in the 10 plus years since this story arc was cancelled, would allow them to improve upon the script's and visual fidelity, such as it's probably being easier for them now to make the giant kaiju-like monsters compared to back when this story arc was originally meant to come out in 2015. With this story arc marking the conclusion to the originally planned full 7th season, the next unfinished story arc would open the planned final 8th season, with the conclusion of the story of Asajj Ventress. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed, please like, subscribe and comment. Until the next time, goodbye.